YouTube, what's good? It's been a minute since I did a vlog, but this one's long overdue. Now, anyone who knows me knows that I'm all about progression in any form that progression comes in. But more than other forms of progression, I'm all about the progression of mankind, the human race, however you want to put it. Having said that, I was having a discussion earlier today, just happened, with one of my longtime close friends, and two situations were presented to me. Now, the two situations aren't important, but the question that was posed after these two situations were presented to me is very important. And I think that it's time that one of the biggest misconceptions, longest standing misconceptions that go pretty much back to the beginning of time, needs to be addressed. What misconception is that? Well, the general consensus is that, as a whole, generally speaking, men as a gender group, in contrast to females as a gender group, lack the propensity to express ourselves emotionally. That's a falsehood. But in order to understand why and how, you have to go beneath the surface. So consider this. Think back to when you were a child. If you're a female, think back to when you were a child, and if you had, brothers or any other little boys around that you grew up, in close proximity to, where you've had the opportunity to see your little brother or other little boys, if you didn't have a little brother, how he was trained, how he was raised and guided. Because I think when people spew empty rhetoric and propaganda like, well, girls mature faster than boys, you got to look at the the model that you're talking about in order for you to be able to gauge how that model develops. I mean, that's true in anything. It's true in life, it's true in business, it's true in relationships, it's true in anything. You can't use a barometer to quantify anything if the scale you're using measures weight, and then you want to compare that to a scale that represents volume. Yeah, the two are similar. We're both dealing with mass, but it's a different formula. It's different. Um, there's different processes going on. There's different things happening there. So let's deal with the question: why is it that men, if this is true, why is it that men seem to react to emotionally charged situations in a way that is verbally abrasive? That's the question that was posed to me. And the second part to that question is it fear based? And the short answer, again, is yes. But in order to understand that, we have to understand that all behavior is learned. And the skill of relating, because it is a skill, it's not something that we're born knowing how to do. It's a skill. And every interaction that we ever had, from our first conscious interaction, which most likely would have been with a parent, to present day, wherever we are now in our lives, every interaction shapes and molds us into arriving at a certain set of responses that we use as a gauge to determine how we will continue to interact with people. And it all feeds off of past interactions. And an interaction that you have tomorrow is going to be largely dependent on how an interaction that you had today turned out. And today reflects yesterday, reflects the day before, reflects the day before. Um, time is time is reverse linear when it comes to relating to each other, and that's the only way that time is linear, is when it's going in reverse. Time moving forward is never linear. It just is what it is. So, but that's a whole nother issue. Um, when we're children, little girls, when they exhibit their emotional responses to things, because emotional responses to things is a natural reaction. The reaction is natural. The manner in which it's done is what has to be fine tuned and trained to be fitting to the situation, and that's what comes through training and through interactions. But core emotional responses, it's a natural reaction. It just happens. It's human. We all are subject to raw, core, basic emotional reactions. As a little girl, those emotional reactions are nurtured. The response to the emotional reactions of the majority of little girls is to be comforted, to be reassured, um, and to be soothed. Now, you can take the same emotional reaction that may be exhibited by a little girl and have that reaction be exhibited by a little boy, and the response is different. Usually, little boys are told, you know, boys don't cry, boys are strong, boys don't show that they're weak or that they're hurting. If you fall, get up and walk it off, or all of these little things that we've all heard growing up. And if the rest of you are parents like I am, even though I try to remain as conscious of some of these things, um, just because I know the potential for damage that these types of responses um, have the propensity to inflict. I'm guilty as a parent, just like my parents were guilty and parents before them, and going back all through time. It's just the way we respond to little boys. We don't want them to come off as weak. I don't know if that's an innate train of thought. I don't know if that's our primitive brains still holding on to the laws of the jungle. I don't know. All I know is that when you make a comment, or if you hear a comment like girls mature faster than boys, you have to consider um, what that's in relation to. Because if, as a little girl and into early adulthood, around, let's say, 16, 17, 18, and beyond that, you already have 16, 17, and 18 years of training on how to react emotionally to things. And the feedback typically is positive, it's reinforcing, it's reassuring. Now, if you're a male, by the time you enter early adulthood, 16, 17, and 18, your perception of emotional reactions is in large part negative. You've always been told to suppress or to brush it off, not to let it bother you, not to show that it bothers you if it does. So by the time we reach the age of relating in a sense where we start to enter into um, romantically and sexually charged relationships with partners of interest, understand that men are now expected to know how to do something that we've never been trained to do, at least not in the same way that our counterparts have been. So when you say men are closed, when you say men are not emotional and they're not expressive, um, you can't put somebody on a job the first day, a job that they've never done, and without any training, expect them to be able to perform the functions of that job to your satisfaction. It's stupid. No good manager would do that. Um, and if you're in a relationship, you need to understand the background, the upbringing, that behaviors all learned. It's all been taught. So if your perception as a female of the individual that you're in a relationship with, the male, and you feel like that person is not emotionally expressive, consider that. I'm not saying it's an excuse, because when we reach a certain age, we all take on the responsibility of being able to make the choice of whether or not to break the cycle or to let the cycle perpetuate itself. But most people, until mistakes are made and until the realization is arrived at, um, in a self-reflective state, nobody can really know that they're ready to break that cycle. So before that realization happens, we got to understand that you can't fight against something that's been drilled. It's generational. It's been drilled into, it's been programmed into the young male's brain from the time he was in infancy. And even in those adolescent years when some males do attempt to explore their emotional range, um, it's looked at by their peers as being sensitive, as being soft, gay, whatever the terms that we've all heard and at some point in time may have used, in our lifetimes, even as kids. So, to get to the point of what I was saying when I made the statement that I don't agree with the general consensus that men don't express themselves emotionally. We do, but it comes out in different ways. And why the question that was posed to me by my friend, which was, why do men respond to emotionally charged situations in a verbally abrasive way? Is it fear based? The reason why the answer is yes is because, and I'm just speaking for men at this point, because at 32, I've been a man in adulthood for a very long time now. And I've experienced a lot of different things that would draw out a lot of different emotions, and I've interacted with my fair share of people, and I've studied my fair share of people and researched my fair share of people, enough so to know at least my responses as it relates to emotionally charged situations, and the countless number of men who I've befriended over the years that I've spoken to, because men do talk to each other about some of the same things that females talk to each other about. It just might not be as publicized. So the reason why our response to things is fear based is because when something triggers a long time programmed, trained response that becomes a habit because it's been drilled into your head from the time you were a kid. Being faced with that situation, even as an adult, you don't know what the correct response is. It's not that you're not feeling the correct response. If as a man you're looking to see if I have feelings or if I can relate to what you're feeling, that's not going to present itself the way that you might like it to. Because even if I'm feeling the same thing that you might be looking to see if I'm feeling, I've been taught and trained to exhibit those feelings in different ways. And it's true for me, I think it's true for most men, if not all. Anytime a situation is emotionally charged enough, because there's breaking points. Um, Anger becomes a natural response to correct the fact that we really don't know how to react in that situation because we weren't trained to. We weren't taught to do it. Um, it's not, and I know that it's not going to make the times that it happens more bearable, but it's at least an insight into what is going on. Because a lot of times we judge the actions, but we don't take the time to try and understand not the reasoning or the excuses for the actions, but what drives the actions. I'm not talking about cause and effect in the sense of, oh, you stepped on my foot, so I punched you in the face. I'm not talking about mechanical reactions to things. I'm talking about state of mind. I'm talking about overall perception of oneself, because it's all about how you view yourself. And regardless of what's going on around you, it's what's going on internally that really drives your actions. Some people are not capable of killing another human being, and they'll never be killers. You'll never see those people on trial for murder. Some people you do. Some people are not built to be cheaters in their relationship, and you'll never see those types of people cheat. You just won't. So it's not about excuse or reasons given, it's about the person. So I just want to make clear when I talk about cause and effect and I talk about reasoning for reactions, I'm not talking about the mechanical sense of the word cause and effect. I'm talking much deeper than that. Just for those, that's just a disclaimer for those who see this and may think, oh, well, no, you still can't use excuses for shit that you do that you know is wrong. It is what it is. But we're off topic. So if fear is the strongest emotion. So a lot of times fear will come out in situations where we don't know how else to display the real feelings that are underneath that fear. I'm not to say that it's right, because it's not right. We're all responsible for ourselves, and teaching ourselves, however we need to teach ourselves, how to deal with each other in relationships and how to relate to one another in the best ways possible. But most of us are flawed, most of us have baggage, and most of us haven't been taught or even shown the example of how to do that. There are people who have, and they have no excuse. And all you can really do at the end of the day is promote communication. Because whether communication is reciprocal, whether it's an open form, flowing both ways, as long as there's some type of communication, you never have to blame yourself for treatment you receive, and you never have to accept the blame from someone else who didn't at least attempt to be as communicative as you were. So, I'm not saying to give men a pass for the times that we are verbally abrasive, and we say harsh things that are hurtful. It's not necessarily about you, the person, or even that situation. It's a trigger response that dates back to some of our first conscious thoughts, and some of the first things that we remember being drilled into us. And to break that type of cycle takes a lot of patience, and it takes a lot of understanding from someone of the opposite sex who won't understand that. And it just is what it is. So I think this situation and other situations like it, if we just talk about it and open the dialogue, we can start to shorten the gap between both gender groups. And all of these just sort of kind of cookie cutter sayings and these misnomers that always seem to pit men against women and always seem to play men short on being, not being, but having the capacity to relate to women on the same wavelengths, because it's ridiculous. Whether you're a male or a female, everything that you know in the present tense is based on your direct interactions with those things and what, if any, lessons you drew from those interactions. It's not about you're a girl, so automatically you're born this way, or you're a boy, so automatically you're born this way, and this is the kind of man you'll be. All behavior is learned. And the better we become at relating to each other and talking to each other, and building with each other, the better our understanding will. It's just a natural reaction that has to follow. It's cause and effect. Where there's no communication, there's a breakdown in all relating. And where there's at least some kind of communication, eventually there has to be a breakthrough, because eventually someone's going to say something that relates to something else that's relatable to someone, and from that the discussion starts. I don't pretend to know everything about everything. I do know a little about a little, and these are just my thoughts. So don't hold it against me. I'm not speaking for anyone else. I'm not trying to put words in anyone's mouths or put thoughts in anyone's head. It's just my thoughts. But that's why I do these vlogs, so you can tell me yours. I'll see you on the next one. Peace and love.